we have one, two, three papers, and we have to complete it by 1 o'clock. So let me start. First is some thoughts on spiritual education by Professor Raj Dubey. Raj Dubey is from Canada, and he's a scientist, engineer by profession, and he has made his own reflections on experiences that he had. He has no Sanskrit background, but whatever experiences he has reflected on them, and the outcome of that, an analysis of that is going to present today. So, how we will have some kind of insight from the analysis of his own experiences and fit into the systems of analysis that we have already developed for ages. We will see. Well, I was supposed to be a co-presenter with him because I have read what he has written, and also I have added some of my own reflection on comments on that. But anyway, since all of you have put me on the chair, I have the privilege of making my observation after he presents his thoughts. So, Professor Dubey.
My salutation to all and every Jivatma present in whatever garb you are here. I am from Canada, belong to an institution called Spiritual Heritage Education Network. I have to explain all four of them. We are doing the networking now, me and you. Then we have to talk about education, and then we have to talk about heritage, and then finally spiritual, and try to connect all of them. But before I do that, can I request you to sit up in your chair, sit up straight. You can close your eyes for a while if you like, and start breathing in a rhythmic fashion. The rhythmic breathing is a reflection of cosmic cycle that goes on around us. Year, months, that cycle is going on, and we want to reproduce those cycles on a miniature scale inside us. What it does, I'll explain later. Coming to the term education, Jhaji visited us last year and he gave a definition. Education frees human mind from its narrowness. Spiritual education is wider, larger than just education. So the definition of a spiritual education would be which liberalizes, universalizes, globalizes the human mind. Education frees it, a spiritual education globalizes it. But before we do that, we have to learn of making it miniature. You see the writing there on the... That is a representation of global form. What we see is a miniature form, a representative of that in our system. First, it impacts our eyes, part of physical body. It is converted into thought, part of our mental body. Then we begin to have meaning of it, part of intellectual body. And this is in ascending order, from physical body to mental body to intellectual body. Unfortunately, we cannot conceptualize anything else, anything beyond that. Now, when we reflect on it, it turns out that education we receive it in the form of information. We turn it into education only when we can apply it usefully in our life. If you cannot do so, it's not education. It's meaningless. Once we have come to that conclusion, Then we look at our physical body. And all of a sudden we realize our physical body, that one we have, is an outcome of a long heritage. We don't know when it started. And we have seen it grow. The development of our physical heritage, we have seen turn into physical personality. And you can see my physical personality, you can see each other's physical personality. That's for everyone to see. Now, when we come to mental personality, it's a collection of thoughts that also has grown from the time I can remember. My memory goes long back because I'm very old, ancient in a way. But if I go back, I see how my thought process has evolved. Along with that has evolved my mental personality. And when we go up a little bit more, we also see our intellectual heritage as a development from early stage, from more ignorance to less ignorance. But it's there. Then a thought immediately comes in. Will I continue to grow physically, mentally, intellectually, or is that the end? If the thought is that it will continue to grow, where is the end? If it's continue to grow, that means we are not poor, we are not perfect. And that thought immediately strikes us. If we are not poor, if we are not perfect, how can we make it perfect? Obviously, only choice to us, since we end up with intellectual personality, is to use our intellect in some way to access, to become the material to become perfect. Then all of a sudden, thought turns to what we often read. And the first thought I could connect it with to make it pull is a hymn from 10th Mandal, 129th Sukt of Rig Veda. In the beginning, there was neither a Sat nor a Sat. Only that one was. And there are two words which comes in, desire and tap. And how it applies to me, that one, desire and tap, is what I'm going to dwell upon. Now the problem comes in, that one, before creation, how can I access that? There's no way I can access. My intellect does not run to that point. Then I'm reminded of Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamadachate. That is perfect. This is perfect. And what it comes from is perfect. And once I realize that, I know that one is too vast for me to study. That one is conceptual. I cannot access it. So only thing that is left for me is to look at this one and analyze this one. And this is how the analysis began. Now I have read some, not too much, because I don't have access to any Sanskrit literature. Then we found out lots of things being said. Can I see that in myself? First, make it miniature, then prolong the thought, and then make it global again. Now, first thought that comes to me is the body receives everything in the present. Mind thinks mostly of the past. Intellect plans for the future. So 3 times are there, past, future, and present. Then we also talked about the fact that, now this is my experience, when I was a child growing up in a city which had no electricity, we had to sleep around 9 and 10, wake up around 3 o'clock. We'll be woken up. It's time to put lantern and read. The first reaction was, let me sleep a bit more. Lethargic, sloth, inertia. And that came to my mind when I began to remember. It came to my mind that is precisely what they call tamoguna. When I got myself out of tamoguna, then lots of thought began to come, one after another. I was completely confused. And then I connected with Rajoguna. This must be Rajoguna. And after that, since I have to read, I composed myself, got the thought out, and began to read what I was supposed to read to be educated. So that must be Satoguna. So the whole concept, which was global in nature, I could miniaturize within myself. Tamoguna, present, connected with the body. They are not, by the way, mutually exclusive. So don't go by that. They all have interaction with each other. Past, present, future interact everywhere. Guna interacts everywhere. They are not mutually exclusive. My body is connected with Tamoguna and present. My mind is connected with Rajoguna and past. And my intellect is connected with Satoguna and future. And we are ascending. And then a thought comes, if ascending and we are going to Purnatva, there must be something beyond Purnatva. I cannot define, I have no access to it. I cannot define it. So what I'll say, that this is beyond three gunas, gunatit. This is beyond three times is eternal. That's how I'm going to define it. And that conception comes in the intellect. Whether it is or it isn't, it's not for me to say. You can say that, it's not for me to say. Then, supposing it is there, can I access it? And then begins the steps of sadhana. Okay? Now, in the case of education, I think I did mention, education is meaningless unless we can apply it in our life. I'm an engineer by profession. I used my physical body to learn the techniques of engineering. First, what I read was turned into impulses, vibration if you want to call that, which was deciphered, cognized by intellect as if it has some meaning. And I got that meaning, and with that meaning, with that understanding, I turned around and I wanted to use it in practice. So what do? A desire comes. I want to do some research. Okay, research on this topic. Thought comes in. The mind steps in. Now I'm from intellect down to mind. Then when I start doing research, the concept starts at the intellect, turns into thought in the mind, and then the writing goes by the physical body. So this is the reverse process. And this reverse process, I found a word for it, but not the word in the form that you will familiarly accept as such. The word is avatar, but I'm not talking about avatar here. I'm talking about avatar. We have gone up, and now whatever we have learned, we are bringing it down to practical application. Then if that is the case, then can I now go beyond this, at least conceptually, and see what happens? Then another word came in, which is again global in nature, Purusharth. How do I connect Purusharth with us? Now, in Purusharth, we need earth. My physical body, in my case, individual case, is my means. Desire comes from mental body. Kamana comes from the mental body. Therefore, my mental body is calm. Dharma. Now, here I had a little bit of a problem. Then I came across a definition. You may not agree, but this is my personal experience. So feel free to disagree with me. This is called Satya Dharma. Satya Dharma. Only thing I find capable of accepting Satya as Dharma is my intellect. So intellect must be Satya Dharma. And when the understanding of Satya Dharma becomes clear and deep, it becomes into Shraddha. And with that Shraddha, I can do things which I believe in, which I'm dedicated to, very easily, without any problem. Okay? Now, while all this is happening, I also notice another thing. That's why I asked you to think of cyclic breathing. Now, when we go from the physical body to mental body, we may be going from present to the past. And all the memory of the past, maybe coming through sanskar or whatever that is, I'm not going to get into that, comes cascading down. And there may be a feeling of guilt, feeling of being unsuccessful there. And that puts us under tension. Okay? And that tension may put us in a dejection mode or depressive mode. Then when we come to the intellect, we are jumping into future. We are planning for the future. We'll do this, we'll do that. That may not happen. The fear comes in. The fear of failure again puts us in despondency. Now, the sequence of movement from body through mental, that sequence is broken. So to maintain the sequence, I have to be in the present all the time. And then if I have to go further, Satya Dharma, that dharma we have used, then finally the moksha. And what we were, when we were thinking of being not full, not perfect, that perfect is what my aim has to be. You can call it moksha if you like. Now once we go up to moksha, now we have to come back. And when we come back, now we hear about the quality in the form of light, quality in the form of, but the light is connected with Agni. Agni has another connection, tap. And the tap of Rigveda came into mind. So in the return journey, that flashes of light comes into mind, along with that comes tap. And tap is the one, this is not tapasya in the sense austerity we mean, I'm talking about literal heat. In this case, it will be called Saurya Agni, present in our Atma. That begins to transform our intellect first, then mind, and when it transforms the body, that is what Chaji told me is called Dehamukti. Dehamukti. Jivan Mukti, क्या कहते हैं जो
Jivan Mukti.
That's what is called Jivan Mukti. Now I saw an example of this the other day, with your permission. I was in the room where Shankaracharya was born. I was meditating in a corner. I saw a person very vaguely coming down and bowing before the Murti. And the head of that person came to me in the form of light. Not as physical body, but as light. And then I saw that light, again in a square pattern, bowing down. It turns out that person was no one other than Dr. V.N. Jha. And I told him after coming back. So now the avataran is taking place from Atma, whatever be the quality of Atma, that quality, light, whatever that is, coming down to my intellectual personality, making it perfect, coming down to mental personality, making it perfect, coming down to physical property, making it perfect. And the word that comes into mind, and this sequence goes on all the time. There was never even a single moment when this experience is not there, except when we bring intellect in the play or mind in the play, that sequence is broken. And we don't realize that we are having a spiritual experience. So first thing in a spiritual education should be to continue that sequence, not let the intellect and the mind come in on the way. And then the sequence is maintained, and whatever comes must be the pure light from that which makes us perfect. And the perfection, we have name for that. We have name for that. In individual self, we call it Jivatma. In global sense, we call it Vishwatma. In transcendental self, which transcends both, we call it Paramatma. And it's the light of Paramatma in whatever it comes that we are receiving, and we have to pass it on, lower below, make it take out that, so that it can be useful for us and for everyone around us. Thank you.
This is his paper he had given me, and you have seen that it is his own experience is it okay? This is his own experience, and he has analyzed them. I tell you his background. He is a scientist, but also he was exposed to a guru who came from India to Canada. And in his association, he and Professor Talwar, they have been together for a long time. So I could discover that the model that he had captured is a Sankhya model. And with the help of that, I think he could analyze it. So model was provided by Sankhya, and on that he reflection, and then he came to this conclusion. So I tried to summarize his whole idea in this way, that there should be a goal. And the goal is, it is a beautitude and plenitude. So, nalpe sukhamasti, bhumaiva sukham. It corresponds to that. Nalpe sukhamasti, bhumaiva sukham. And what is that bhuma? What is that bhuma? Is ananda. And that ananda, and we all have come from that. Ananda dhyeva kalvimani bhutani jayante. And we all are going back to that ananda. So I related that kind of an idea. We have no problem in accepting this beautitude and plenitude as the goal of life. Now, how to reach this goal? Exactly, he has told you that it should be through reflection. You should reflect. Therefore, education must be reflection. Education should be, therefore, I have given a definition of education I created. The education is the process which enables a person to reflect. So, education must enable you to reflect. And again, we have a tradition of this kind. I went back to Vedic tradition and I saw that we are also asked to reflect. How? Shrotavya. Shrotavya, I am interpreting in a wider sense. It is not only Shrotavya only to this sense, but from all Indriyas. So it is getting the data. All datas are coming through Indriyas. So Shrotavya should be understood receiving the data from external world. Then next is Mantavya. This is reflection. And that reflection is critical reflection. Anumana, Anumatavya. Mantavya means Anumatavya. It is an inference. Yeah, it's a logical analysis of the data. And then you will come to a conclusion. And that on that conclusion, Nididhyasitavya. Then you concentrate on that. And then Atmavare Drashtavya. So this is in that context it has come. So this is the way how we, as a jiva, we are transformed to Vishwatma slowly, and that is possible because he has a framework of Sankhya, and therefore he is talking in that way. So this is how I could relate with the tradition of reflection in the Vedic tradition. And then he says that how should it be done in education? The paper says that the education must address 4 aspects, and that 4 aspects of personality. And these are the 4 aspects of personality. Body, of course. Then next is mind. The next is intellect. And last is spirit. So, body, mind, intellect and spirit. Spirit is the observer, Sakshi. So you can see he is a Sakshi. Because of this, all this is happening. Yasya bhasa sarva vidam vibhati. So that kind of an idea is perhaps coming. He has not read all these things, but his analysis is bringing down to this kind of a conclusion. Therefore, education has to reflect on these 4 aspects of personality. So there will be personality development, and once personality development has taken place, you are a good man in your family, in society, and wherever your relations are. Then I thought that this kind of a disciplining a person and developing personality, the Yoga Sutra, the Ashtanga Yoga may be made use of. And we do not have time, but I am thinking that kind of an idea of programming the ideas of Ashtanga Yoga to formulate programs for personality development in this way perhaps. And because in that Ashtanga Yoga has been divided into 2 groups. One is of 5 and the other one is 3. One is called Bahiranga Sadhana, and one group of 3 is called Antaranga Sadhana. So Antaranga Sadhana is the merge, is a journey towards that spirit. And Bahiranga Sadhana is discipline the person to take up that journey of discovering the truth. So up to
So from niyama, niyama. So up to pratyahara is for conditioning, creating an environment, disciplining yourself to take up the journey of dharana, dhyana and samadhi. I think this is what he has presented. I think is very much in tune with what the tradition, the Vedic tradition has been reflecting. So I am also your presenter, but I thank you in the capacity for giving this perception. And you know, he has been telling many experiences, which, you see, I am a logician by training, but so I am unable to analyze. Very, very difficult. And one such experience, I do not have time, otherwise I would have invited Mr. Bill, another person, who narrated that he had not seen a guru, the same guru with whom they all are related. And after, in dream, in meditation, he saw that guru, his picture came to his flash. And then after 6, he had not seen him. Had he seen him, then I can explain. But he had not seen him, and the same person he met after 6 years. And that transformed his life. Now, you can see, I gave an explanation that this is a proof for rebirth. You must be together in earlier birth, and therefore the image is stored in you. And that is why perhaps the image came and it was actualized by meeting that guy. So this kind of many experiences they are telling, which are not easily explainable with our ordinary mind and ordinary intellect. And therefore we need to develop personality, need to develop ourselves to such an extent that many things can come. And in the Yoga Sutra, you remember, how much caution he has given, Patanjali, that you may develop yourself to such a height because your weakness, because you are a human being, your weakness totally will not go. So the siddhis will start coming from you. And that is a danger, that is a pit that you will fall forever. So avoid that and go towards Nirbija Samadhi. That is the thing. So this is in short what Professor Dubey has. I request you all, being a scientist, without getting exposed to this kind of a tradition, only by analysis of his experiences, that he is coming to confirm what the analysis has been done by the tradition. So a big hand to education in all-inclusive spiritual, universal spirituality, but specific topic she will tell you.
Namaste. I bow to the divinity present in all of us. I am Lakshmi Priya, teacher in Chinmaya Vidyalaya Higher Secondary School, Chennai. I am going to present my paper in the perspective of a teacher. It's going to be in the form of questions and answers. Most part of my paper, it's going to be in the form of question and answers.
Would you one line introduction about yourself, please tell?
I am Lakshmi Priya, a teacher, a Sanskrit teacher in Chinmaya Vidyalaya Higher Secondary School, Chennai.
Good.
Everything about this topic is discussed in detail by the great masters of the past and present, and is very clearly mentioned in our scriptures. There is nothing new to be added or discovered. It is only with the optimistic intention, like Chinmayananda ji said, maximum happiness to maximum number of people for unlimited time. The goal of education in all-inclusive spirituality, universal spirituality, can be reached. What is the relationship between philosophy, religion, and spirituality? If I had to tell a small child, I would always use the analogy. Say you have a laddu in your hand. That laddu is spirituality. Talking about the laddu is philosophy. Encouraging to eat the laddu and eating the laddu is religion. Enjoying the laddu is spirituality. Put it.
That's good.
Our perspective develops when we grow spiritually. The subject of spirit is spirituality. The word spirit means so many different things for people who follow different faiths, traditions, and philosophies. Philosophies like Advaita, Vishishta Advaita, and Dvaita can be termed as different stages of spiritual progress or evolution based on their perspective of what spirit is to them. In the book called Self Unfoldment, Swami Chinmayananda tells the three kinds of our relationships with truth have been beautifully commented upon in Ramayana when Hanuman, the greatest devotee of Sri Rama, explains his relationship with Sri Rama. Hanuman says, O Lord, at moments when I am steeped in my body consciousness, I am thy slave. When I identify myself with my mind and intellect, I am a part of thee, that is Jiva. And when I am in my Swarupa, that is as the spirit, I am thyself. Thus, our relationship with the Absolute can be explained in three different ways according to our state of consciousness. Advaita, the non-dualism, is accepted as the ultimate goal according to Sri Adi Shankaracharya and other masters like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Ramana Maharshi, Swami Vivekananda and Swami Chinmayananda ji. In other religions like Christianity, Islam, etc., even a child would say God is everywhere and in everybody. So, this is enough to prove that every religion is pointing towards the right direction. If we could infer from the higher perspective that religions, faiths, philosophies can be considered as the maps and signs in spiritual journey. It's the Guru's grace alone which will take us to our destination. Whatever the scripture we read, whatever lecture we listen, without the grace of a Guru, we will not be able to grasp the perfection in them. So, without the grace, people understand scriptures in the way they want. If Duryodhana in Mahabharata were to go through the scriptures of various religions, he would find only what he wanted and surely he would get them from there. If Yudhishthira were to go through the scriptures of the various religions, he would find everything what would satisfy his appetite. To sum it up, it's the intention of the seeker. If the intention of the seeker is maximum happiness to maximum people for unlimited time, then with the grace of the Guru, one would definitely find them wherever they look. So, with the grace, if we go through the scriptures, we will be perfectly satisfied if we come across the highest thoughts. Rest can fall through the sieve of wisdom. The word spirituality, does it need an adjective? It is said that a word can have an adjective if it has variety. For example, blue lotus is possible, red lotus is possible. So, adjective is applicable here. For fire, cold fire cannot exist and fire is always hot. So, fire does not need adjective as hot. In the same way, the word spirituality is all inclusive and universal, just like the word hot for fire. So, it does not need any adjective and it is self explanatory. We find a lot of guidance in the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, Brahma Sutras, and Adi Shankara's Aparoksha Anubhuti and Viveka Chudamani. Education. What are the essential ingredients of education? It includes the educator, educated, and the subject of education. And in this context of spirituality, it is the Guru, the student, and the subject. Swami Vivekananda ji knew that education plays a vital role in curing the evils in the society and is critical in shaping the future of humanity. His definition of education, education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. Education, he said, must provide life building, man making, character making, assimilation of ideas. The idea of this type of education would be to produce an integrated person, one who has learned how to improve his intellect, purify his emotions, and stand firm on the moral virtues and unselfishness. A small analogy again, a dust-filled glass is, if left unattended, will collect more dust. Cleaning process should start at the beginning itself. To see through the glass, dust must be removed completely. Our mind is a glass with a dust when we are born. This dust is ignorance. Ignorance must be removed to attain spirituality. Education is the brush to remove the ignorance. Now, next, what should be the aim of a student of spirituality? In this context, let's see Yad Bhavam Tad Bhavati and how it can guide in the path of spirituality. As you think, so you become. Thoughts are very powerful. When the thoughts are focused, they manifest quickly. Here, a question arises what the thought should be. Our great masters and scriptures have guided beautifully. The greatest thing one can aspire for is the removal of ignorance and attaining spirituality. And this desire should be implanted in the mind at a very young age. As Chinmayanandaji tells, catch them young. One day, a teacher asked his student to wish a boon from God. Then she asked everyone what would be their wish. One said wealth, one said power, and one asked for food. But one student wished he could be God. The teacher was curious and asked what would he do if he was God. The student humbly replied he would wait for everyone to ask for the same wish he had asked for, which means he wanted everyone to be God. What an aspiration, isn't it? As per Shankaracharya's Viveka Chudamani, the 31st shloka, Moksha Karana Samagryam Bhaktireva Ghariyasi Swaswarupa Anusandhanam Bhaktirit Abhidhiyate. Among all means of liberation, devotion is supreme. To seek earnestly to know one's own real self is said to be devotion. Amrutam iha bhavati, na anya panta ayanaya vidyate. Amrutam is here. There is no other way for self-realization. Here, the panta points to the highest aspiration. The 34th verse of Viveka Chudamani, such a person who has such aspiration should approach the Guru through whom freedom from bondage is attainable. One who is wise, well versed in the scriptures, sinless, free from desire, knowing the nature of Brahman. Students' wish from a Guru should be Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityoma Amrutangamaya. Lead me from unreal to real, lead me from darkness to light, lead me from mortality to immortality. It is from Brihadaranya Upanishad 1.3.28. Now, who is a Guru? Before accepting a Guru, what should a student make sure of? Spiritual qualification of a Guru are as equally important as the educational ones. In fact, are a great deal more important because we are going to commit years of our life to find the answers to bigger questions. Therefore, before we choose to give our lives in the hands of a Guru, it is important to check the following qualifications. The Guru can convey enlightenment at will. We are able to meet and talk to other enlightened people. Spiritual initiation consists of revelation and not information, imagination, and visualization. The Guru must be able to converse with his initiates both internally and externally, since the ability to communicate with his initiates and other planes of consciousness is a part of the inner spiritual journey. Teaching. The greatest and the most charitable quality of an enlightened teacher or a Guru is that on his path there is no discrimination on the basis of an individual, religious background, sex, creed, color, or caste. Spiritual enlightenment is given regardless of the gender or nationality. Beware of a Guru who tells you that you will have to be dead to be enlightened. It is not relevant. Those who make such absurd statements must be challenged and questioned about their spiritual state. All the scriptures of the East bear testimony to the fact that one attains to the state of enlightenment in one lifetime through the grace of a true Guru, and it's called Jivan Mukti, which means to be enlightened whilst alive. Swami Vivekananda writes the following about spiritual teachers in his book Bhakti Yoga on page 37. Higher and nobler than all ordinary ones are another set of teachers called the avatars of Ishvara in the world. They can transmit spirituality with a touch or a mere wish. The lowest and the most degraded characters become in 1 second saints at their command. They are the teachers of all teachers, the highest manifestation of God through man. We cannot see God except through them. We cannot help worshipping them, and indeed, they are only ones whom we are bound to worship. Now, after accepting a person as a Guru, what should be the mental condition of a student? On the student side, in order to facilitate manifestation of his innate strength and knowledge, he should cultivate the spirit of Shraddha, that is faith in himself, humility, submission and veneration for the teacher, and this also necessary to create a favorable environment for learning. The Taittiriya Upanishad gives the instruction, Acharya Devo Bhava. Let the teacher be your Deva. The teacher-pupil relationship based on respect and mutual trust is the cornerstone of the edifice of Vivekananda's scheme of education. Once we surrender to our Guru, we should blindly follow him because 1. We are blinded by ignorance. So having full faith in him, we have to follow him. And 2. It does not matter if we blindly or consciously follow him because where would one look for God who is everywhere? What should be taught to children between age of 5 and 15 years? Although symbols are useful to teach children, they should be guided very carefully till they are 15 years of age. When their abstract thinking develops, the idols can become their ideals. For universal peace, how important is the education in spirituality? My transformation transforms the outside world. When one attains spirituality, he finds himself in every person. Just think, if every person in this world attains spirituality, how can anyone fight with himself? Peace will prevail. The meaning in teaching spirituality, the problems and limitations of conveying its essence through words. From time immemorial, this is the problem of the words, as words cannot contain the spirit. Words are for the mind and intellect. They both are limited. The only solution is to go to a perfect spiritual master who can take us beyond the mind and intellect through his grace. What are the various obstacles faced in the process of education? Is there any relationship between spirituality, karma, and fate? When talking about the education in spirituality, it's the journey from finite I to the infinite I. Medium might be different, but the path is only one. The obstacles are brought only by the student in his mind. There are obstacles in creation. In matter, there are no obstacles in spirit. Karma, fate is only for matter. How can it affect the spirit? If anyone tells that one's karma is responsible for attaining enlightenment, then it's just an excuse as he cannot help in this matter. Is it feasible to educate people from all walks of life? Story of Tripura Rahasya from Haritayana Samhita, which was considered by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi as one of the greatest works that expounded Advaita philosophy. He often quoted from it. There is a story of a princess who spiritually awakened an entire kingdom. So, in a kingdom, people from all walks of life will be there. So, there is a proof that it is feasible for everybody to attain to spirituality. Under a true spiritual master, it should be possible even today. How was the education in ancient times and how is it now? What are the disadvantages of today's education? How can it be rectified? According to Vedanta philosophy, a human being has 5 sheaths or covering: physical sheath, the vital sheath, the mental sheath, the intellectual sheath, and the blissful sheath. Today's education can at best touch the first 4 sheaths, but not the last one. Secular knowledge, skills, and moral values may take care of the first 4 sheaths, but the spiritual knowledge is essential for the 5th. Moreover, it should be noted that the 5th sheath is the reservoir of bliss, knowledge, and strength, and all the sheaths are activated by the 5th. In olden days, even the spiritual knowledge was taken care, which took care of the holistic development of a child. It could be rectified if more adepts come forward to help humanity from the verge of destruction. My last question for the audience to ponder, as a teacher, it's a homework for is there any evidence of people attaining the goal of spirituality, which would be an encouragement for a spiritual seeker? At last, my experience in the path I am walking. In the path I am walking, there is a revelation and information. Revelation is given more importance. The word revelation also needs explanation. It can certainly mean that someone is being shown what is already there. This vision settles in the form of unshakable thought. It can be said to be a synonym for clarity. The doubts disappear and do not return in their light. Revelation happens by the grace of Guru within oneself. If revelation is spoken, then it may become information to others. Information or thoughts which keep changing with time. Information is common to all. It can be got by just the effort of the senses. It is for the mind and the intellect. information becomes boring and loses its value after some time. It cannot contain the truth. The only three things we do is meditate, communicate, and teach. Here, expansion of one's consciousness is given more priority rather than the exploration of consciousness. Here, I can communicate with people who have finished their spiritual journey and people who are in various stages of the path. One of my important revelation is that I am a programmer of the mind and I can program it as I wish towards spirituality. That was one of my realizations. The state of Jivan Mukti is assured in this very life. Reincarnation is termed as a recycling, as it's for the matter and not for the self. Conclusion. As Chinmayanandaji says, students are lamps to be lit and not vessels to be filled with information. If our goal of spirituality is clear, education will automatically happen, and that's the magic of the phrase Yad Bhavam Tad Bhavati. Let's visualize the humanity attaining spirituality by the Guru's grace. In Tripura Rahasya, it is recorded that once many sages of different thoughts, philosophies, and faiths had a conference just like this one in Brahmaloka. Each one of them spoke of his own system with courage and conviction and maintained that it was better than all the rest. But they could not reach to any conclusion. So, along with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, they meditated on the Supreme. The result was the Vidya Gita, the song of education towards spirituality that showed them the paths. Just like that, I hope Vidya Gita may manifest here for us to help humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lakshmi Priya. It was a beautiful presentation, and I should inform that Chinmaya Vidyalaya, the schools, I already developed 10 volumes of material for value education to children. The name is Garden of Life. That is the name, under the name, 10 volumes. They are already implementing this value education in their schools. And this afternoon, one Swamiji from Coimbatore will come and make presentations. So they have already started implementing it. And also, equally, handbooks for teachers. How teachers should approach the students. That is more important. There, he has to study the psychology of the students. So how to reach this material, how to motivate them, how to take them towards that. So they are already in action. And thank you for one thing I have already told you earlier. Again I repeat that Shankaracharya in one of his stotra has already said that teacher is one who produces someone exactly like him. So a lamp, another lamp. So teacher is lamp. And today's online education and all that, how much it happens, now you have to, so teach how much this can happen, how much lamp can produce another lamp, that you can judge. So whether the teacher has become irrelevant in this modern age, we should decide. Anyway, thank you very much. We'll take up the questions at the end. So now, may I request Dr. Tiwari? He is a professor of philosophy in Technical University, Jammu. So he is going to present on exploring the role of ritual in spiritual education. Dr. Tiwari.
Thank you, sir. A very good afternoon to all of you. I got some infection in my throat, so I suppose if I am not intelligible at any point, just please ask me to stop.
Take 15 minutes, okay?
Yes, only 15 minutes. I will not need. Before I begin, I wish to express my gratitude to Dr. Rana and Dr. Manoj for giving me this occasion to learn from the enlightened minds. In fact, as I stand today, before you, it is also having some kind of material support which I received from my institution called Shri Mata Vaishno Devi University. The Vice Chancellor has been very kind to provide me full financial support to hear you. So I acknowledge this with gratitude. In fact, I don't have anything new to share. Only thing I wish is to put emphasis on what is already with you, and I have certain reviews and reflections to situate my emphasis. The theme which I coined is exploring the role of rituals in spiritual education. This is an exploration. This is not any submission or anything a kind of advice. I am just looking for a better alternative for the method of teaching whereby we can have some kind of occasion where we can progress in terms of spirituality. So partially I will read out my paper. It is more than 5,000 words. So I will partially read it out and then partially brief, and I hope I will finish before 5 to 1. So the attempt, as I said, is of exploration and exploring the role of ritual. I am taking the sense of ritual in a not very usual way. Rituals are the practices, that is the ordinary understanding, which are repeated, and in their pattern they embody the values which make our life meaningful. There is something essential about this definition, but this is applicable to any kind of ritual. So in my exploration, I concerned with the rituals which are largely religious, since the spiritual practices are normally recognized with the religious practices, such as praying, offering, services, and charitable activities, etc., of religious institutions. Another reason for focusing largely on religious rituals, is due to the significance of religion in our life. Swami Vivekananda, as you know, very clearly says that religion is the necessity. And what we understand in normal sense, secularism, to me it's a kind of confusion. I belong to Awadh region. There we have very close city called Ayodhya, where Rama was born. So shall I begin my invocation or my presentation with the invocation of Rama worship or Rama sloka involving Rama? I am working in Shri Mata Vaishno Devi University, so should I begin with an invocation of Shri Mata Vaishno Devi, or I should have some kind of syncretic shloka? This is a symbol having the different parts of the religious symbols of different traditions, Christianity, Hinduism, etc. So shall I have any kind of coining of shloka for my purpose? So I think secularism, in one sense, is due to this kind of confusion. I am going from here to Europe or America. I am going from Kerala to Kashmir. What kind of things we need to practice? Because ultimately it is related to our practice. Unless we practice, unless we do something positively, it is not going to happen. We have wonderful philosophies, we have wonderful preachings, but still why we are facing this much problem? So that is my worry, and because of that I am looking for a better alternative. And I saw, it's my personal, in fact, experience, I saw that this alternative can be seen in some form of rituals. What kind of rituals? That is all matter of discussion. So, let me define what I mean by spiritual. If you see the concept of education, it is to enable a human being to live a harmonious individual life, family life, social life, and life at the nature or at large including the nature. So we have individual, my family, then society, and then the whole cosmos. If we consider this broad definition of education, then there is no need of adding any qualification like spiritual to education. This qualification is redundant because education is supposed to enable us to lead a harmonious life. But it has some relevance. The adjectival qualification has some relevance because the relevance is due to our present problem we are facing. So when we talk of spiritual education, it is strictly in terms of the qualification which need to be added to the modern education. And this modern education is, as a Western thinker called James Hillman says, produces objective observer. And in some sense, we all are that. But what is peculiar to this objective observer is the characterlessness. This observer doesn't have any character. And it so happens that in the whole world, this characterless observer, this objective observer, is given responsibility, or somehow he or she has intruded into the policy making and devising rules, regulations for academic institutions. So that is the worry. The main problem with this kind of education is that it is aimless. It doesn't, in fact, put any aim before us. What we are going to have after undergoing this kind of education. And I see when I say a spiritual education, there is an objective. So what I mean by spiritual, I must clearly point out that it is the characteristic of a person which enables him or her to realize his or her association or integration or union with everything else in the cosmos. That simply means we all are associated, of course, but in a very limited way. We don't feel associated with everything else. We feel associated with only something. So, spiritual, and that element is within us. I have this assumption, in fact, that it has a support from my own experience. And with this definition, I would like to distinguish between what is called moral or value education and what I call spiritual education. As I say, moral or value education, it aims at producing moral virtues in all of us. It doesn't have any further or any transcendent objective. It wants to inculcate morality, moral virtues. But spiritual education is not restricted to this kind of inculcation. It should not be, because the very term spiritual suggests that we must feel, we must realize our association, our union with everything else. And therefore, what is my humble submission is that let us try to draw a distinction between what is called moral education or value education and what we are looking for, spiritual education. And for this purpose, I try to see a relationship between what is ritual and how it is related to religion. And in doing so, I reviewed certain literature, and what I find unique to rituals, or some rituals, is that they have the element of spirituality inherent in them. So I would like to understand the term spiritual by including ritual, spiritual, if we break spi and ritual. So what I would say, this is my understanding, rituals spy something, right? Spy ritual. I'm breaking this and putting Y instead of I. So rituals spy something. What they spy? We know the meaning of spy. I'm assuming this. So what they spy? We all have played I Spy in our childhood days. So what they spy? What is inherent in them? It is nothing but what is called spiritual. Then I say that rituals, the moment we see rituals, naturally religion creeps in our mind. So I reflected on the character of religion, and I tried to point out that religion can be understood with the help of 5 features. So, the concept of divinity, it is in every religion, the concept of certain symbols, certain narratives, and finally, you have certain practices, ritualistic practices. Vivekananda captured all of these 5 in 3 terms: philosophy, mythology, rituals. There is no diversity at the level of philosophy because philosophy has this element of spirituality. So, there are doctrinal differences, and these differences are in the reading of mythology, in fact. And then the rituals, they have the element which is in fact contained in philosophy, and every ritual belonging to every religion has some kind of that spirituality. Of course, when we look at surface, then there are problems. So, how to understand the other religion? Remember, ritual is the living reality. Here, the basic principles of religion interact with what we see, the sensory reality. So, if we want to have something like spirituality, there has to be the beginning from this sensuous reality. And here, the significance of rituals. So, I see that spirituality can be found only in religion. I completely disagree with Professor Talbar when he talks about secular spiritualism. The way I have confusion regarding secularism, I have confusion regarding this secular spiritualism. So, in the last, in fact, I have done through the conceptual background. What I wish to conclude by way of reading certain things, I must quote Swami Tejo Mayanand, the worldwide head of this Chinmay mission. He observes on the predicament that unfortunately, when we take our children to functions at the temples and they begin to ask about questions about what they see, we cannot answer them. Yet, this is quotation, yet when the children revolt later as teenagers, we say, what happened to these children? These kids are terrible. We never used to question our religion. That is the problem. Is it therefore not advisable that a serious reconsideration of the most visible aspect of religions should be taken seriously? That means the way we understand rituals today, a reconsideration and maybe ensuing revision of rituals is required. Swamiji sees the problem in intellectual inertia, what he calls, which is not only responsible for the avoidance of questions, but also for the mechanistic follow-up of rituals. What is it which can break this inertia? The answer is also available in the traditions, which is a proper awareness. We do certain things without awareness, so a proper awareness, and I have in fact reviewed certain things and then I have certain reflections. So in conclusion, what I wish to propose, I would like to conclude with a question. It is open-ended question. Is it possible to work out suitable sets of rituals for different regions of the educational institutions to be adhered to? If the answer is to be yes, the identification of the rituals which are compatible with the educationally suitable notion of spirituality and the various forms of spiritual development that might be based on, it would be a Herculean task. It's not that easy, so it is a responsibility of all the educationists and we people who are involved in the teaching, etc., to think over seriously. Because the dangers associated with the rituals need to be identified and strictly avoided. An informed ritualistic performance would not only ensure the sense of unity, but also involve the avoidance of any possible misuses and a seed for any subsequent review. What I think the focus on rituals is important because it is this area of human activity which unites ideals and practices with the required adequate sanctity. Moreover, It is this dimension of organized religion which has caused maximum unrest and violence. It is therefore not only necessary to familiarize everyone with the essentials of rituals, but also to utilize its greatest strength of unification and engagement of every informed participant. It is an upward movement from practice to theory. And such movement is necessary given the fact that there are many theories in the market, and no amount of theoretical familiarity could ensure any effect on our behavior unless it is practiced. So Arun Tagore says, Rabindranath Tagore says, and I quote, "The highest mission of education is to help us to realize the inner principle of the unity of every knowledge, all knowledge, and all the activities of social and spiritual being." In his very insightful title, Identity and Violence, Amartya Sen observes, the politics of global confrontation is frequently seen as a corollary of religious or cultural divisions in the world. What make these divisions possible are apparently none other than the associated rituals which form the physiology of any religious or cultural traditions. Given any particular context of a spontaneous choice between my plural identities as a Hindu, a teacher, a son, an employee, etc., to which identity I am going to choose, it is going to be determined by the unconscious formed through my engaged learning. And therefore it is necessary to have a healthy surrounding for the formation of a harmonious unconscious. I close with this invocation that let us all ponder over the nature and function of the rituals which are given utmost reverence in the religious beliefs for the inculcation of spiritual values. And if we see the history, it has been throughout history. In fact, we have seen the serious revisions in terms of the Upanishadic thinkings of the Vedic rituals. Then we see that the Buddha and Mahavir has serious revision and pondering over the nature of and function of rituals. And in the 19th century, we see the leaders of the Renaissance, they have also done the same. And it was all a concern, in fact, how to access to others, how to expand ourselves, to embrace everyone else, everything else in the cosmos that is necessary. And the demand of the crisis due to the modern education is precisely this. This is my humble submission that we need to have serious reconsideration, revision of rituals. And let us see, Dr. Manoj suggested that we can have seminar on this philosophical, mythological and ritualistic aspect of religion. Why not begin with the most concrete, that is the nature and function of rituals, and how they, and can we have any set of rituals which can be. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tiwari. Now, friends, we do not have time. Otherwise, I would have given you some food for thinking. Only I mentioned to him that on this issue, please reflect on the definition of ritual as provided by Jaimini. Chodana, Lakshano, Artha and Anartha. So, that is the dichotomy that he makes. So, that which produces Artha, that is Dharma. Dharma is ritual, activity. So, that is one definition. But in this context, what has happened is very, very, very fascinating. But I will take the time, then you will not get the time for questioning. Therefore, I do not speak now. When I will get occasion, I will speak. But I cannot stop my temptation to mentioning Shankaracharya. That he says, he ridicules puja. Will you believe? The Shankaracharya is ridiculed in Para Puja. There is a stotra called Para Puja. And he says that, what are you doing? Snanam samarpayami. That means the Almighty can be dirty. Therefore, you should wash.
Yajñopavitam samarpayami. That means he can be Brahmin. So you make him a Brahmin by putting this thing. Pradakshinam karomi. That means the Almighty is only restricted to only this temple so that you can go around him. You see the rationality of Shankara. And then what he suggests, and that is the answer to your all queries. Yad yat karma karomi. This generation. Yad yat karma karomi shambho tadastu tavaradhanam. Whatever we do, in whatever form, if you consider that this is the worship of the Almighty, then all unethical, all these things will automatically evaporate and you will be uniting yourself with the whole cosmos.